Well, welcome back, everyone. Today we're going to continue on in Chapter 2, and today we're going to take a look at some studies that have been done in the realm of leadership and the orientation that leaders have. And really what we've seen, there are two dimensions that a leader possesses or they adhere to. One is to be employee-centered and one is to be task-centered. So today we're going to take a look at those two dimensions. We're going to take a look at the schools that really study them and the outcomes and what those two orientations mean. Welcome back, everybody, and we're continuing on with traits, behaviors, and relationships. Now think back, and you may be currently experiencing this. Think of some of the leaders that you know or have known. Maybe you're working for a leader now in church or in business. And how does that person relate to the people? Are they business-oriented or are they people-oriented? Now, these are two dimensions that we've come to identify fairly recently. When it comes to leadership, there are those that are focused primarily on getting the job done, and then there are those who are focused on the people and their well-being. So this is what we're going to look at today, the difference between the two. Now, the behavioral approaches when it comes to management. You have the autocratic method. Now, this centralizes authority and derives power from position, control of rewards, and coercion. Effective when the skill difference between the leader and subordinate is high. So what does that mean? Well, let me give you an example out of history. Back in the time of the Industrial Revolution, when, as we saw that second era, where organizations had grown and they had outgrown one person's ability to lead it, they would have managers come and try to incorporate structure within these organizations. Now, their role was to maximize productivity. That's what they were getting paid for. So their job was to make sure that the workers were giving the most for the least amount of money. And the autocratic method meant that you do what I tell you to do. I'm the boss, you're the subordinate. And it was a very rigid, very unbending type of leadership style. So they controlled the people, as you see here, through rewards. We'll reward performance, but if not, we'll fire you. We'll get rid of you. So that was a harsh way of treating the people. Now, is it effective, the do as I say type of approach? Well, yeah, in the right perspective and in the right circumstances. Now, notice here, when the skill difference between the leader and the subordinate is what? Is high, then you need that autocratic method. And what are we alluding to here? You take a brand new person who gets to the job site. They don't know anything. They don't even know that they don't know. So in this point is probably one of the best ways, probably the best way of leading is to tell the person, just do as I say. Watch me. And as you start to learn, then you can get involved more. But at the beginning, when a person is brand new, they don't have any knowledge, skills, abilities, then it's best that you lead by example and you're more instructive than anything else. Now, the second approach is the democratic approach. And this delegates authority, encourages participation, relies on subordinates' knowledge for completion of tasks, and demands on subordinate respect for influence. And it is effective if subordinate possesses decision-making skills. So here we're leveraging that employee's ability to think, to know the circumstances, to be able to provide a quality input in order for us to be able to reach whatever objectives we're trying to reach. And a lot of times we solicit others to vote, to provide their input, and you collaborate on issues and objectives and so forth. So the autocratic is more of a directed, authoritative type approach, where the democratic is more participative. Now, Exhibit 2.3 just shows you here the difference between the autocratic, where it's all about the boss, to where it's more democratic and subordinate-centered leadership. And as you see, the boss-centered, most of the authority is right here with the boss. But as that goes to the right, you see here that it becomes less about the boss and more about the employee, where the employee gets to make decisions and they're a part of this decision-making process, and they're given autonomy and empowerment to be able to work. So that's the slide that we have taken part in, and in the direction that it's gone over the years, from where the manager makes decisions to where the manager permits the subordinate to make decisions and so forth. Now, where does this all come from, and where do we get the idea of leader-oriented and employee-oriented? Well, studies have been done quite often and quite frequently in the past. And one of the studies was the Ohio State studies, and as you can read in your textbook, they developed the leader behavior description questionnaire to employees, and what they found with their studies was that there were two types of leadership. There was consideration and initiating structure. So let's talk about those two. Consideration. That's the extent to which a leader is sensitive to subordinates, where the leader respects their ideas and feelings, and they establish mutual trust. So here you are a people person. You are looking at establishing rapport, trust, and as a result of that, they're going to give you that mutual respect, and the work can be accomplished. Now, initiating structure, and that's the extent to which a leader is task-oriented and directs subordinates' work activities toward goal achievement. So you still get the job done, but you are more focused on the job than you are the people. Now, what I've found, and what studies have revealed, is pretty much what you would expect. People with a high degree of consideration, that means they put the people first, have lower productivity, but they have higher morale. Whereas initiating structure, these types of leaders have high productivity, but they have lower morale. So in the long run, which way is best? Well, from a production standpoint, initiating structure. But if you're going to keep your people, keep them happy and working, you need to have consideration. Now, both in the extreme won't work. So there needs to be a happy medium where you can facilitate both of them. And that's where we're at right now with some of the participative management techniques and so forth that we're going to be looking at as we move on in this course. Now, the University of Michigan, not to be outdone by Ohio State, looked at studies and look at what they found. There are those who are employee-centered, and they focus on the subordinates, the human needs, and there are those who are job-centered, and these individuals focus on the job itself and directing activities and so forth. So pretty much the same thing. There's nothing new here, but they just labeled it differently than Ohio State, and they were able to, come up with the same conclusion, but just a different methodology of going about it and different labels. Now, the leadership grid that we're going to see here in a few minutes is a two-dimensional leadership model that describes major leadership styles, and that's based on measuring both concern for the people and concern for production. So let's take a look at this. We have what's called the Blake and Mouton's managerial grid. It was devised by a man named Robert Blake and Jane Mouton. So this is their idea, or this is their model for management. So if you take a look here, concern for people. When you have a high concern for people, and you have over here concern for results, when you have a high concern for people and low concern for results, then what do you have? You have usually country club management, which everything is a free-for-all. You're more worried about people, you're friendly, everything is a party. So that would be high in people but low in results. But what if you are low in both? Well, here you have impoverished management, and that's where minimum work effort gets done. Little regard is given to the people. Really, you just sit in the office all day and let them do whatever. You are disengaged from the whole thing. Over here, we have high regard for people and a low or high regard for results, and that's team management. And work is accomplished from committed people, interdependence through a common stake in organization purpose, and it leads to relationships of trust and respect. So here you have high and high on both of them. And then you have authority compliance management, where you have a high degree of concern for results, but maybe not so much for the people. So you have a autocratic method of management here, where you're focused solely on the work itself. You couldn't care less about the people. And then you have here the middle of the road approach. And here you're just maintaining as much stability as you can. You have adequate organization performance, and it's possible through balancing the necessity to get out work with maintaining morale of the people at a satisfactory level. So here you are looking at that equilibrium. You are looking at the people getting the job done, but clearly to have a high regard for people and a high regard for results, that's very difficult, but I would argue that's probably going to be your best method for being able to direct people, to lead them, to guide them, to get them to really go in the direction that you want them to go. Now, think about this. I want you to envision with these 5 quadrants, people that you know who would fit into these categories. Let's take a look at the country club manager. Have you ever known a person in management who was really just so focused on the people that the job didn't get done? You know, a lot of times pastors are like that. They love the people so much that really the work doesn't get done, or their heart goes before them in everything. And maybe you know people who are in this lower quadrant, impoverished management. Maybe they have a low concern for both. They're really not engaged with either one. They don't have really a concern for the people or for the results of the work being done. And what about team management? Maybe that person that you know that's inspired you from a leadership perspective. Maybe they were the team type of person who wanted to get things done but also wanted to maintain high morale with the people. Or what about those who were do as I say, period, and they were authoritative and they used that approach? And then there may be people who are the middle of the road, people who seem to be able to balance it all, both the people and the work. You know, we talk about leadership as if it is just a science, but it's also an art. The art of being able to deal with people, the art of being able to direct people, the art of being able to really be Christ-like in the workplace. And as I said before, all of these principles that we're talking about, you can use those in ministry as well as you can in business. It applies to both. Anywhere you have people working towards a goal, you can incorporate principles of management and leadership into it. And I pray as we go along in this course and as you read these subsequent chapters, that the Lord will just lay on your heart ways that you can take what you're learning right now and to be able to apply it to whatever situation you may be in, whether you're working full-time at a job or whether you're working full-time in ministry. It makes no difference. People are people. And these principles that you're learning right now, these traits, these approaches, the evolution of these theories and so forth, you can glean all types of valuable insight and information to be able to be a better and more effective leader. Well, that's all we have for today. We're going to cut it a little short today, and then we will come back tomorrow and we'll finish up this chapter. Well, everyone, there are times in our lives as leaders where we can become just laser focused on one thing. We can be focused on the job itself, and where nobody else really matters, or we give off that impression because we are focused on getting the job done. And then there are times when we are so people focused that we forget about the job. You know, leadership is not just about relationships, it's balancing relationships and the responsibilities of the job itself. Today, I hope you've been able to gain a little bit more of understanding about the two perspectives that leaders have when it comes to people and the work. Now, tomorrow we're going to finish up with Chapter 2, so have a good day, and we'll see you then.